what's going on, y'all? T-Bob here.
And Jake as well.
And you're about to watch a little OTB LSU.
We're going to give you all the latest, greatest between LSU football, baseball, women's basketball, softball, and everything in between.
Bottom line, if you want to talk Tigers, keep it locked, subscribe, like it, and we hope you enjoy it. And Brian Kelly was talking to the media yesterday, and he revealed a few things that I want to discuss. First off, and Taylor had kind of intimated this to us a bit, but Brian Kelly saying that Mason Smith would not have been healthy or more than likely would have been listed as questionable for the Florida State game. Now, that is one little interesting subnote here, is yesterday's press conference was the first of the codified injury reports that LSU will be doing, where on Monday and Thursday, they will provide an injury report, and then before the game, they will either put the final status as available or unavailable. I was also interested to learn that the Big Ten's actually going to be forcing their teams to do this as well. The 2 hours before kickoff, all coaches are going to be required to send a final availability sheet. So it's just a little side note there. If you're gambling on Big Ten football this year and you have injury concerns, wait until 2 hours before kickoff to place those bets, and you will know exactly who will and will not be playing. But here's what Kelly said. Quote, "Let's be clear, we would love for Mason Smith to be playing in this game. He's an outstanding football player, but we were really pleased with the growth and development of our defensive line." And he would go on to talk about Jordan Jefferson, Jacoby Guillory, Jalen Lee, and then obviously Mekhi Wingo as well. And I feel like I've heard a lot of hype about Jordan Jefferson throughout this camp. And so this is kind of in keeping with that. The quote on Jalen Lee is pretty interesting. He says, "The transfer from Florida has probably been one of the surprises of camp for us. He didn't have a great spring. He worked hard in the weight room. He does a nice job for us in terms of adding depth at the defensive tackle position." So as we try to paint the picture, right, you don't feel great about your secondary against their weapons going into this game, though maybe somebody surprises you. You lose Mason Smith, you felt like would have been crucial in terms of affecting the quarterback and maybe helping those DBs out. So now the next man up comes into question. We knew about Jacoby Guillory, but I don't know that the average LSU fan is as familiar with the names Jordan Jefferson and Jalen Lee. So there's some guys to keep in mind.
I feel like they know Jordan Jefferson well.
Yeah, I know. As I was saying it, I could see the runway that I was laying down there.
And then you said Jalen Lee. I thought you were going to say Jarrett Lee.
Yeah. I didn't even think about that. Jordan and Jay Lee back, but in defensive line form.
That's
funny.
Like,
if you look at the depth chart, it says Jay Jefferson and Jay Lee.
Yeah.
Like a buddy of mine on Facebook posted the other day. He goes, I bet Kelly starts Jefferson, and if it doesn't work, he'll put in Lee in the second half.
I mean, I believe that I believe that in in some versions of kind of the belief in reincarnation, right? How you live your life is based on what you're reincarnated as. And to go from quarterback to defensive line would maybe say that those two are paying for some sort of sins. Because it's not like coming back as like an animal, but it's definitely a downgrade from the status that you once had. So here's to hoping that this time around they can do better. And then in 5, 10, 15 years, we get another version, only they're like wide receivers this time or something. But yeah, so Jay Lee and Jordan Jefferson going to be relied upon to make up for the absence of Mason Smith and really just to battle this Florida State team on Saturday.
I mean, I'm pretty sure he said Jalen Lee was one of the biggest surprises of camp in a positive way.
Yeah, he did.
And look, he's a player who's from here, local guy, and I remember him in recruiting like I'm sure most of you do, and he goes to Florida, and for whatever reason, that situation didn't work out for him. But, I mean, he's that kind of player, the player that has the option to go to LSU, go to Florida at a high school, and you went in the portal this year and you realized you had an issue with depth, and so you went and got multiple guys because you still weren't sure how you're going to have a Mason Smith come back from ACL injury either. So you stockpiled all this depth behind him and guys that played and guys that were experienced. Certainly Jordan Jefferson has the experience. He has more experience out there than Jalen Lee does, but you're going to need him because now you're going to have the ability, if you're Florida State, to look at number 18 and say, all right, we're going to double team this guy. We're going to make sure that the point of emphasis is that guy, and then that guy, Jefferson, Lee, Guillory, whoever it is, you've got to show us that you can beat us. And so you didn't have that luxury before. So even sometimes, and you know this as well as any of us, Steve, being an offensive lineman, it's like yeah, that guy could dominate. Mason Smith could dominate, but also, like, if he got the attention, it could be Wingo. And if Wingo got the attention, it could be him. And you couldn't be right if you were an offensive line. Now that other player, whoever that might be, has got to go prove that you can't be right, because they're going to slide everything, not literally slide everything, but all their focus is going to be on Mekhi Wingo.
Yeah, I mean, you can't get blocked 1-on-1 if you're one of these other guys, and you're actually perfectly set up to make a lot of plays, stack reps, NFL tape, like the opportunity is massive here. I was talking to somebody at Dance yesterday, and they framed kind of adversity like that, right? I mean, like, if there's a lot to be fixed about something, all that is there's a lot of opportunity. Okay, so losing Mason Smith sucks, but the way to frame it, if you're Jordan Jefferson, Jay Lee, or Guillory, is it's a lot of opportunity to put your best foot forward on the game that all NFL scouts will be watching.
Yep.
You go play well against that very talented Florida State offensive line, well, all of a sudden you're on radars that you just weren't on before. So make the most of this stage that you're being given here. Other things to note from the press conference: Aaron Anderson locked in to return punts and kickoffs, whereas Caleb Jackson will be the off returner on kickoff. So this makes sense from a couple of different. This makes a lot of sense.
Yes. It reminds me when you said off returner. My rookie year, you don't really know a whole lot. You're just trying to, get noticed. And Sproles was our returner, and I was the off returner. Yeah. And I'd walk to the back line, kind of just walk back there, and so the announcer would be like, "Hey, back returning, number 22 Jacob Hester, number 43 Darren Sproles." Then I'd walk to my position. I was like, "Hey, you heard the announcer. Me and Sproles back here returning on kickoff."
Did you ever get one? Did they ever kick it away from him? Because that's the whole idea, right? You want to kick it away from Aaron Anderson, then you have to deal with the raw athleticism of Caleb Jackson, which we saw. And you don't need a pass block or anything to be a kick returner. So we saw just the sheer raw physical skill set out of Jackson on that swing pass that he took 80 to the house in the scrimmage the other day. That's what you're trying to tap into there if they want to avoid Aaron Anderson.
You have to be so much better than you were a year ago. Not only in this game, but certainly this game, in the return game. Think about how bad you were on special teams, and you still went to the SEC championship game. I mean, you had last year against Florida State alone, you had 2 muff punts and 2 block kicks.
Yeah.
Think about that.
Yeah.
That's points, that's possessions. And so, you just wanted somebody back there. I forget what game it was. Maybe y'all remember. There was a home game, and the punt returner caught the ball, and the entire crowd cheered and stood up because it had become such an issue. The Tennessee game, opening kickoff, probably didn't lose you that game, but I would have loved to seen starting the game a different way, any other way than what you did. And so it was such an issue. You had no threat in the return game. You just catching it was a chore. So the fact that you were going to return it at all was laughable. So imagine going from that to what they feel like what they have now. I mean, he talked about in the ESPN.com article how dynamic this player is and how it just looks completely different with him back there. And so a lot of times, because of the rules, I wouldn't talk a ton about returner. But as we know, that can change the game. You played with a game-changer returner. I played. We both, Trenton Holiday, Tyron, you can go back and forth of guys that were just difference makers in the return game. And last year, it was such – I really don't even know the word to put. I've said horrific. I've said awful. I want to come up with a bigger word because that's how bad it was. And now, where you feel like you're at, just completely different.
Yeah, it was garbage. You go with
I like garbage.
The canon horrendous.
I like that one too.
Yeah,
see?
You always hear him, but horrific accomplishes a goal because I actually like horrific better than garbage, because it was scary in how bad it was. It was tough to watch. You needed to cover your eyes the same way that you do in a very horrific movie. And look, Aaron Anderson, that's one of the main reasons why you brought him in. So you should. There's no excuse. All of special teams have to be way better. With that in mind, Damian Ramos remains the place kicker, which makes a lot of sense to me. I thought last year he actually did pretty damn well. Wasn't asked to do a ton, but when he was, came through. Speaking of the injury report, Josh Williams should be good to go for Sunday. Armani Goodwin should not. Again, we'll look for another update on that on Thursday and then get that final number before the game. And another thing that some people were talking about yesterday is the storm moving in on Florida right now. Idalia, the tropical storm, expected to maybe make landfall as a Category 3 hurricane. That is supposed to hit tomorrow. FSU's campus is actually closed down tomorrow. They're doing dining services and whatnot, but no, I'm sure they're having practice of some sort, but no classes or anything. But it appears from everything that I've read, no one seems to really be worried about it affecting the actual game on game day. So if you're someone who's been wondering about whether or not the game will be canceled, there is nothing that would say that.
I remember practicing in 2005, the night before Hurricane Katrina hit, like in the hours before, and we were the only people remotely close to campus. It felt like a zombie apocalypse, and it was so loud in the indoor, just like wind, and it felt like trees were just slamming into the indoor. We had like these makeshift lights that were kind of shining on the field.
Yeah, so I got to LSU obviously a couple of years after that, and what happens then is people like think back on those times and talk about what it was like, and kind of the read that I'd always heard that just bottom line, Les didn't really know what he was getting into with hurricane season. Like didn't think it was a big deal, and maybe pushed things a little too far, and that they would have done things differently with the knowledge that they later gained.
Yeah, I've told you my story of we were all back home. Going down I-49, I was the only non-emergency vehicle going south, and there was traffic from Shreveport to Baton Rouge, bumper to bumper. Oof. From that that entire stretch was bumper to bumper, and I was the only. I got stopped so many times. I'm like, hey,
I got football practice.
Coach Nader called, and I got to get back.
That is so crazy. But so Idalia, and obviously, hopefully. No major property damage, loss of life, anything like that in the storm. Does not look like it's going to affect the game on Saturday. Wow, Jake, what incredible takes.
I mean, those guys, they're just the best.
I think so. And if you think so, again, hit the like button, subscribe, ring the bell so you get notifications when we post every single day here on OTB LSU.